All right, it is 11 a.m. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining me this morning for a pretty comprehensive presentation. Today, we're going to talk about social media, particularly the recent changes that affect destinations. Since we have a particular interest in Virginia destinations for somewhat obvious reasons, uh, this presentation is designed specifically for that. I'm Patrick King, founder and CEO of Imagine. We're a multidisciplinary marketing agency headquartered in Manassas with offices in Richmond and Norfolk. Multidisciplinary is just a fancy way of saying that we cover research, strategy, digital branding, web development, and campaign management. It just uses fewer syllables. Um, our itinerary for today is going to start with the algorithm shifts that have taken place recently among six social channels: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Yelp, and TripAdvisor, along with some little known best practices for each. Next, we'll journey to some new destination strategies based on those changes. We'll make a stopover at strategy development, where we'll walk through building a long term marketing approach step by step. I'll then go over a quick case study where we put this strategy in action, and we'll end today's adventure with some Q&A. Along the way, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and I can answer them all at the end. But for now, sit back and enjoy the ride. All of the complexity of social media's willingness to block or improve our posts' visibility comes from one word: algorithms. Put simply, algorithms are calculations that provide a predetermined action to data that users present. Basically, it just tells the software what to do when somebody puts up a post. Understanding every nuance of each platform's algorithm can be exhausting. They can be triggered by how frequently you post, how popular your channel is, even what you do in other places online. But fortunately, you can impact all these. Let's start with the big mama of social: Facebook. The algorithm changes that Facebook throws out probably draw the ire of more marketers than any other platform. Anyone with a company page on Facebook knows how frustrating it can be to publish a post only to have it seen by a small fraction of your followers. There are some techniques that you can use to combat this, and I'll show them momentarily. But first, the algorithm changes. First, Facebook has expanded the areas of content that it frowns upon to now include regulated products. While most may not apply, the mention of alcoholic beverages, some of you might. This can be troubling for like brewers, distilleries, wineries. So you'll need to be careful about how you talk about things on your page. uh, my recommendation is focus on promoting the experience instead of promoting a product. Next, and this is a long time coming, contests and giveaways. I've seen the popularity of these die off, but for those that are looking to take this route to get some quick followers, know that its time has come. Next, unoriginal content. By this, they're typically talking about a pattern of just posting links. Facebook doesn't want its users to leave. So links to other sites have become increasingly frowned upon. One or two links in every long while is fine, but try to make sure that your posts are original content more times than not. Finally, and this is a very new one, a disproportionate amount of traffic from Facebook. Basically, if Facebook gets the hint that most of your website traffic is just coming from Facebook, um, the algorithm will now start to devalue your posts, which makes it a good idea to spread out your social visibility. Publish some articles elsewhere online, maybe run some PR or some paid ads on Google. I mentioned earlier that there are some ways to improve your visibility when you only get like a handful of eyeballs on each post. I just said a handful of eyeballs. Gross. Anyway, a few techniques to use are first, tagging people and other companies in your posts where possible, and also where relevant. Doing this notifies those people or companies that you tag, and it encourages them to engage with the post, sharing, commenting, and so on. Another approach is to stick to a schedule of conversational posts. The frequency in the schedule doesn't matter as much, like how many times you post in a week doesn't really matter as much as the fact that you're being consistent. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. And when I say conversational, I mean your posts shouldn't be one-sided announcements, right? Social media is not a broadcast platform. You have to ignite conversations. If your visibility is so low that you're only getting a couple views per post, likes aren't going to help you much if your visibility is that low. You need to have heavier engagement, and shares and comments are that type of heavy engagement. One more thing regarding Facebook. You may have noticed over the past few months that posts in groups are now more visible in your feed. This can be used to great effect if your page is involved in local groups. Just make sure that your posts aren't spammy and that you're also engaging with other members' posts as well. This not only helps visibility, but it also builds trust among other members so they don't see your post, the posts that you put up every once in a while, they just appear spammy. Moving on, let's talk about Instagram, which is my personal favorite for a bunch of reasons. Most importantly, the lack of bickering that you see on other platforms, Facebook, or spammy, salesy posts that you'll see on other channels. You just don't get that much on Instagram. They've made a lot of changes recently to the overall experience. Maybe the most stressed of any of the platforms I'll cover today. First, they're expanding options for online sellers with product feeds that flow right into your profile. And they're adding new shop buttons to profiles. And some posts don't have to pay for those shop buttons. But there is a catch with the online shopping. This functionality isn't available to everyone. You have to be an established account, meaning that you've been on Instagram for some time and you have a sizable following. Next, your products have to be reviewed and approved before your feed can go live. Next is their increased preference to accounts that post stories and are playing with their new feature, Instagram Reels. Reels is like their response to TikTok. So it's got a bunch of video effects that you can use to kind of get the same experience, just with fewer of your kids' friends watching you. They're also increasing their preference for accounts that engage with other accounts. You know, the whole social part of social media. A good rule of thumb is to comment on other posts as much as you post yourself, if not more. Finally, they're working on a feature in the app that'll let you see more than the handful of stories that are currently at the top of the app. And this is to encourage users to post more stories. So since you know that stories are important to Instagram, it's something that your account should probably consider. Twitter. Not much happens with Twitter's algorithm. It's pretty simple and consistent, which in a way is the beauty of the platform. There are some things you should know about, though, if Twitter is part of your tool set. First, engagement rules. The more engagement, the longer your tweet will be shown. By engagement, I don't mean likes. In order to get the most miles out of your tweets, they need shares and discussion. Recency is also obviously a big thing, but we want longer term visibility, and you get that through having that type of activity on your tweets. The only big change to the platform that we've seen happen last year when they gave users the option to load the most popular tweets instead of just recent ones. And that's not really a novel feature. Other platforms have had it for years. So really, all in all, not much to report on here in terms of real change. The same can't be said for YouTube, whose algorithm changes may one day incite a riot from content creators. One recent change is more attention being given to the user. Traditionally, the success of a video was totally up to the video itself and its publisher. But now YouTube is factoring in the viewer's history more and more. Things like the amount of time spent watching each video gets taken into account. So if the viewer normally watches like 3 to 4 minute recipe videos, it'll be harder for them to see, and therefore watch, like a 30-minute video on how to smoke a brisket. A big change, and frankly a welcome one, relates to quote unquote borderline content. This is content that doesn't quite violate YouTube's policies, but just skirts around them. It includes like inaccurate information, stuff that could possibly be taken as fact, and stuff that could possibly be harmful. Finally, more attention and more scrutiny is being paid to content that the publisher confirms is okay to show kids. The goal is for YouTube to become a more family-friendly platform. I kind of sped through, those last two with borderline content and kid friendliness, because while it's important for you to know about them, it won't influence your content choices as much. So Yelp, the channel we love to hate. While a lot of what they program into the site is an obvious cash grab, there are some features that make some sense when you think about it. First, like YouTube, is the consideration they give to the user when showing results. The activity the user takes, the number of solid reviews they've given, and so on, can impact what they're shown since the platform knows the user better. Some of you may have noticed this. When you get a review and it doesn't factor into your overall star rating, if you get a bunch of reviews all at once, Yelp has a way of saying that some reviews may not be authentic or quote unquote suggested. The rule of thumb here is to get good reviews, get them over time, because the more spread out they are and the more consistent they are, the more they'll become suggested by Yelp. Now, of course, you can't control when someone posts a review, of course. So you have to play the long game with this one and build your reputation on Yelp over time. For the next feature here, this also takes the user into account. The listings that users are shown have more to do with the user's history and geography than your star rating. Having a 100% 5-star ratings doesn't necessarily improve your visibility, but increasing the number of business categories can, since you're showing up under more searches. So focus on the number of business categories that are relevant for your business and make sure that you're listing under those. And just as important to many of you is TripAdvisor. Keeping your account in tip-top shape is pretty simple. Just be consistent in your campaigns to get customers to review you on the platform. But be careful, since negative ratings are factored in differently. It's not the same bubble average. Yes, they're called bubbles, not stars. It's not just the average, but the quantity of negative reviews also plays into the algorithm. And so negative reviews are more detrimental than just factoring into an average. Recency is also very important. If you have, say, 100 great reviews, but they're from like a year ago, you'll lose ground to other accounts that may only have like 20 or 30, but they've been added over the past few months. In fact, when the bubble ranking is the same, if you're both 5 stars, it's the one with the most recent reviews that gets a higher ranking. All right. That's a lot of algorithm talk. I could go on for longer, but I'm sure you all have other things planned for the rest of the week. So let's move on to what you can put into place right now to make the most of these channels. There are 5 main strategies to follow. And while many of you are doing these to some degree, it's important to stress consistency. Your channels will be rewarded over time, but you have to know what to be consistent at so you know where to focus your attention. For each strategy, I chose a great photo from a different part of Virginia. They don't pertain to the strategies per se, but I'm just really travel deprived, as many of you may be. So I just threw in some beauty from around the state. Uh, so our first strategy, time. Timing, recency, and frequency. They will be your friends in the long term. And I can't reliably give you all some universal time of the day when all of your posts are going to work. It simply doesn't work that way, regardless of any of the infographics that you've read. You have to find the right time for your own accounts. And you can find these times in either Hootsuite, if you use it, Google Analytics, or in the insight section of any of the platforms that you use. Only those times can be accurate for your business. Frequency and consistency, they will take care of the recency issue. But in terms of frequency, it's like a tortoise and the hare situation. Don't commit to doing 4 or 5 posts per week if you can't maintain it. You're better off in the eyes of these platforms if you post 1 to 2 times per week, but you do it consistently. Make sure that the schedule that you commit to is sustainable over the long term. Yes. This one can be strangely difficult, but it's vital to your social media plan. Use it as it's intended. By that, I mean use it for conversations and engagement. Comment on other accounts. Aim to have responses on your own posts, and use it as a communication tool, just as you would use it personally. That activity plays into the reputation of your account and will have a tremendous impact on your visibility. So, see, so many accounts use it for like one-way information, right? Promotions, announcements, that sort of thing. Those won't get you engagement, and they hurt your visibility over time. You don't always have to ask questions, though, to get some sort of engagement. Sharing stories of your team, or in the case of localities, show stories of your residents. Find ways to tell stories of your organization's history, customer experiences, the people behind the scenes, things that bring a human factor to your content. Because people engage more with people than they do with promotions. Yes, new features. I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about Instagram. Basically, when a platform rolls out a new feature, they will always give preference and better treatment to those accounts who adopt it. So take a look at Instagram Reels and see if there's a way to use it in your marketing mix. Facebook and Instagram stories are probably more relevant options, so find ways to use them at least. And with stories, it doesn't need to be video every time. You'll see that you can use a mix of imagery and video. Next up, your audience has changed. I know I'm speaking to a bunch of different organizations right now, but I can say without a doubt that if you haven't done persona research in the past 6 months, you might not be dealing with accurate information. If you're not sure how or even what persona development is, don't worry, I'm going to give a run through shortly. Finally, once those personas are current, build an omni-channel strategy to capture them on every platform and every channel. So you can take all of that and lead your entire audience to desired actions. By using all of your social channels, as well as website, email, and other tools, by using them in unison, you build a more impactful long-term marketing program. Now, the first step to effective strategy is knowing your customer. This is a persona builder that we use in the early stages of campaigns here at Imagine, and it helps us determine the needs and values and desires, and ultimately what fulfillment means to each type of customer in an organization. It also helps us determine where, when, and with what type of messaging we can best communicate with them. You'll see here in this example, I'm not going with a specific business. We work with a number of localities on like tourism and economic development, and it's often a more extensive challenge. So I'm going to use a visitor to a new town during a pandemic, to really test our approach. So we're calling this persona Working Wife Wendy. On average, she's 35 to 44 years old. She's a working mother with kids. Typically, you can find her on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. Her preferred methods of communication, though, are web chat, phone, Facebook Messenger. Things are a little more direct. She doesn't really care to have a lot of back and forth on email, but when you do communicate with her, she wants warm, welcoming, knowledgeable. She wants that combination of warmth and competence. When she does her research and she's looking for a town to go to, she's going to check out online reviews. She's going to check out the social platforms that she's familiar with, and she's probably going to do some Google searches. Her ultimate objective in this case is to have a safe day out for the three of them: her husband, their son, and herself. A road trip and a small town with shops and a nice place for lunch that are all practicing, best distancing practices and that sort of stuff. Her biggest challenges in order to schedule this time, though, are getting time away from work. She is budget conscious, making sure that, as I said, the destination is practicing, safe distancing procedures. And her son is kind of a picky eater. Things that may influence where she goes are her personal interests, which are American history, home decorating, self-improvement, that sort of stuff. We're going to come back to this persona, but when I say each type of customer, like there's more than one, let me illustrate. For the purposes of our previous persona, we'll look at the challenges of a destination, and there are a lot of variables to consider. Each group profile has different motivations, levels of involvement, or desired outcomes. So it's important from the jump to create separate personas, within your overall audience. You take all of the data that's at your disposal and start to formulate your perfect customer by the behaviors that they've already demonstrated. Now, where you get all this data on where the most active or the kind of content they care about depends on how you've been marketing. And that's mainly online, but speaking with the people on your front line can also give you insights that you may not be able to get from just online data. There are some common platforms and where you can get a lot of the information to build out your personas, like the ones I'm showing here. For financial history, of course, there's QuickBooks or a conversation with your finance department. And these are just the platforms. I'm sure that everyone on the call has industry publications for your target audiences that help out as well. So once you've gathered that data, you have a clear vision of your new customer, their needs, their activity, their preferences. We're now going to place this persona into a journey. And that customer journey takes them from being completely unaware and possibly cynical to becoming a delighted and voluntary promoter of your organization. This is the trusty marketing funnel, or sales funnel, customer journey, workflow, methodology, blah, blah, blah. The process has a ton of different names, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this. The purpose of this diagram is to craft and track each step of a person's experience with your company so that the entire experience is designed for their enjoyment with their needs at the center of your marketing activity. Now, what we're going to end up with is going to be a little more complex than what you may have seen before, but I'll walk you through each step. So far, we've populated the journey with the tools or tactics we know will reach that previous persona. For example, we know to get their attention, they're going to be on Facebook, Instagram, Google, and maybe some review sites like TripAdvisor. We know that for research, they're going to use Google, which may lead them to YouTube, the website, Yelp, and so on. For conversion, we take a look at what their motivations are, what their challenges are. Ease of reservations for either dining or if they're going to be there overnight. And it's a family, so finding incentives for families. And then if we want them to become vocal advocates, we need to give them a platform. So maybe some referral programs. They're going to a new town. So finding something that welcomes them and allows them to discover the new town on their own, that can be a great way to get them acclimated. Next, we place our key performance indicators, the KPIs, the things that we measure how good we're doing with these, for each tactic so that we can quickly know if we're doing well at each stage. So we now have a way to measure each stage to check its performance. For instance, for Google and Facebook, those awareness channels, we're going to look at overall traffic. We're going to look at engagement. For that research phase, we're going to look at email subscribers. We're going to look at people that may have started following social channels. For conversions, we all know this, it really comes down to revenue, right? And then for referrals, we're going to see how much the customer has taken upon themselves to talk about their experience in a positive way. Now, finally, we'll go a step further, and we're going to design the customer experience. How can we use each stage as an opportunity to do something that our audience thinks is remarkable? We're going beyond what others may be doing in these channels to something that's both unique and tailored to the interests of that particular audience. For instance, for research, we want to try to make the process easier for them. So I've seen in a number of cases where they'll have a plan your trip where you kind of like pick the things that you want to do and you can print out, this is what our plan is. In some cases, the experience has been created for them by what their pursuits are. So if you want to go on the romance track, then it's going to show you how to the things that that area has to offer to create a romantic time. And same thing with families, with boomers or empty nesters and that sort of thing. For conversion, often things that are simple as special parking for recent moms, merchant promos, things like that can help sweeten the deal. And then for referral, I talked a little earlier about how we want to have ways to help families become acclimated to a new town. So doing a QR code or a GPS driven scavenger hunt could be a great way to get people accustomed to a new area while also providing the type of social distancing that that families need. So that is a customer-centric experience. It takes into account what we know has changed about our customers, puts their desire for trust, as well as any nuances we need to consider at the center of our marketing. We've used this methodology for a series of campaigns that we did for Macedon Water Park. They gave us a couple months to turn around 2 campaigns to boost visits to their park, and there was a reach goal of making the park enough money to afford a massive expansion. The 2 campaigns positioned Macedon as a favorable alternative to going to the beach or just a break from the everyday. The results are on this slide. In this campaign, we leveraged Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, print. We ran Google ads, and then a couple videos like this one.
Looking for a summer vacation without all the hassle? Beat the beach at the national award-winning Massanutten Water Park. Enjoy indoor and outdoor family fun, like our tube slides, giant tipping bucket, and the largest flow rider in Virginia. Forget about beach traffic, sandy towels, and unpredictable weather. Instead, enjoy dining, arcade games, and endless water-filled fun. Massanutten Water Park has everything your family wants, and nothing they don't, to make your summer vacation one to remember.
So as a result, they got enough to do their expansion, and we picked up a few awards on the way as well. All that is to say that the methodology works, and it works for a large water park, and it can work for your destination as well. So with that, I will take any questions you have. Let's take a look. So what do we have here?